February 20th, 1943, found the battle raging north of the Kasserine Pass in Tunisia. The official battle report would never quite capture the sheer astonishment the German tank commanders experienced that morning. American Sherman tanks were executing maneuvers that flew in the face of everything the Vermicar doctrine said was possible without direct visual signals. Imagine, if you will, the dust and smoke swirling across the North African battlefield. 5 Sherman tanks, separated by rugged terrain that offered no line of sight between them, converged on German positions with a timing that bordered on the supernatural. There were no signal flags waving, no flares being shot into the sky, no dispatch riders racing between the vehicles. Yet, they moved together like a single, coordinated organism, each tank intuitively covering the blind spots the others couldn't see. Each crew seemed to possess an uncanny awareness of exactly where their comrades were positioned on the battlefield. Inside their German Panzer IVs, equipped with the somewhat antiquated Fuji 5 radios, tank commanders struggled to even hear their own company leaders. The static crackling through their amplitude modulation systems was overwhelming. The German transmitters, boasting a mere 10 watts of power, were considered state-of-the-art back in the 1930s, but they couldn't penetrate more than a few hundred meters, especially when the tanks were on the move. To make matters worse, most German tanks only had receivers. They were unable to report what they saw or even call for backup when they were in a tight spot. The Americans, on the other hand, were operating with a technology the Germans didn't even know existed. Frequency modulation radios were installed in every single tank. Crystal-controlled precision, a robust 25 watts of transmission power, and clarity that sliced through the engine noise and the surrounding battlefield chaos like a hot knife through butter. All the way from the assembly lines in Detroit, some 8,000 miles away, the most decisive technological advantage of World War II was revealing itself. It wasn't about thicker armor plating or larger gun calibers. It was about those invisible electromagnetic waves that connected every American tank crew in ways the Vermicar never even dreamed were possible. The transformation had begun on July 22, 1941, when the United States Army standardized the Signal Corps radio sets SCR 508, SCR 528, and SCR 538 for all medium tanks. While German forces were rapidly advancing through the Soviet Union, employing tactics that heavily relied on radio communication between command vehicles, American engineers at the Galvin Manufacturing Company, later known as Motorola, were busy perfecting frequency modulation technology that would soon render German systems completely obsolete. The engineering team included Daniel E. Noble, the visionary who conceived the idea of applying FM technology in military vehicles, and Henryk Magnuski, the principal RF engineer, who expertly solved the technical challenges of installing such sophisticated electronics in the incredibly harsh environment of a tank. Their creation weighed in at a hefty 181 pounds and transformed every Sherman tank into a node in what was essentially the world's first battlefield network. The BC-604 transmitter generated a powerful 25 watts of power, 2.5 times the output of the German FUG-5. Operating in the 0 to 27. 9 MHz frequency range, it provided 10 preset channels with crystal-controlled stability. The dual BC-603 receivers in the STR-508 allowed commanders to monitor multiple frequencies simultaneously, a capability that would prove absolutely crucial in the heat of battle. But the real revolution lay in frequency modulation itself. Edwin Armstrong's FM technology, licensed to the military, effectively eliminated the static and interference that constantly plagued amplitude modulation systems. While German tank radios picked up every electrical discharge as annoying noise, American FM radios delivered remarkably clear voice communication, even amidst heavy artillery barrages. November 8, 1942, marked the beginning of Operation Torch, which brought American armor to North Africa. The 2nd Armored Division's tanks landed near Safi and Fadala, equipped with SCR 508 radios that would very quickly demonstrate their clear superiority over German communications. The Afrika Korps, despite being the Wehrmacht's most seasoned armored force, operated under seriously limiting communication constraints. A standard German tank platoon, consisting of 5 vehicles, typically included only 1 or 2 with full FUG-5 transceivers capable of both transmitting and receiving. The remaining tanks carried only FUG-2 receivers. They could hear orders, but they couldn't respond or report enemy positions back to command. As a result, the German tank platoons functioned through a rigid top-down hierarchy. The platoon leader transmitted orders, and subordinate tanks acknowledged those orders through actions rather than verbal confirmations. When command tanks were destroyed, easily identifiable by their multiple antennas, entire platoons lost coordination. This inherent vulnerability would prove catastrophic against American forces, where every tank could essentially assume command functions. The Battle of Kasserine Pass, fought from February 14 to 24, 1943, provided the first major demonstration of American radio superiority. Although tactically a German victory, the battle revealed capabilities that absolutely stunned Wehrmacht observers. During the often confused fighting, scattered elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division managed to maintain coordination across a vast 50-mile stretch of the battlefield. Tank crews who had never even met before coordinated attacks, warned each other of imminent threats, and called in accurate artillery support through crystal-clear FM communications. German signals intelligence units intercepted American transmissions and noted their exceptional clarity and the level of coordination. The 10th Panzer Division's intelligence section reported that American units maintained reliable communication at ranges where German radios produced nothing but static. Even more disturbing was the realization that every American tank seemed capable of full transmission, not just the command vehicles. The German FUG-5 radios, operating on amplitude modulation in the 27, 0 to 33, 3 MHz range, suffered from fundamental limitations. The 10-watt transmitter struggled to reach even 2 to 3 kilometers in ideal conditions, and that range dropped to a mere few hundred meters when the vehicles were moving. Every spark plug firing, every electrical motor running, every track movement generated interference that the AM systems simply couldn't filter out. September 1943 saw American armor arrive in Italy, where the mountainous terrain should have negated radio advantages. Instead, FM technology proved even more valuable in conditions that rendered German AM radios virtually useless. The SCR-508's frequency modulation handled the multipath interference of the mountain valleys far better than amplitude modulation could. American tanks coordinated movements through terrain where visual signals were impossible, and German radios failed completely during the advance toward Cassino. American armored units demonstrated capabilities that were simply beyond German comprehension. Tank platoons, separated by imposing ridgelines, coordinated attacks with a precision that German doctrine stated absolutely required visual contact. The 1st Armored Division's after-action reports described routine coordination at distances where German radios produced only static. June 6, 1944. As Sherman tanks rolled off the landing craft at Normandy, their SCR-508 radios maintained continuous contact with naval fire support, a level of coordination that was simply impossible with German technology. However, the hedgerow fighting quickly revealed a critical gap in communication. The tank radios couldn't communicate directly with infantry radios, which operated on different frequencies. The infantry's SCR-300 operated on 40, 0 to 48, 0 MHz, which was incompatible with the tank's 20, 0 to 27, 9 MHz range. This communication gap proved deadly in the bocage, where German infantry armed with Panzerfausts could easily approach American tanks while nearby American infantry had absolutely no way to warn them. But American ingenuity solved the problem within weeks. Tank crews mounted E-8 field telephones in ammunition boxes welded to the tank exteriors, wired directly to the internal communications. By Operation Cobra in late July, this simple modification revolutionized tank infantry cooperation. July 25th to 30th. 1944. Operation Cobra demonstrated the full potential of American radio superiority. The 2nd Armored Division, commanded by Major General Edward H. Brooks, coordinated over 200 Sherman tanks through sophisticated radio networks that enabled unprecedented battlefield control. German defenders from the Panzer Lehr Division faced an enemy that seemed to possess almost supernatural awareness. American tanks responded instantly to threats reported by other units miles away. Artillery strikes, precisely coordinated through tank radios, arrived within minutes of target identification. The contrast with German capabilities was stark. Panzer Lehr, once Germany's premier armored division, had been reduced to communication poverty. Most tanks operated without radios, relying on visual signals in terrain where visibility rarely exceeded 100 meters. The few functioning radios suffered from interference and limited range that prevented effective coordination. The irony was truly profound. Germany had actually pioneered radio use in armored warfare. Heinz Guderian, the architect of Blitzkrieg, had insisted on equipping tanks with radios since the 1920s. His book, Achtung Panzer, published in 1937, emphasized communication as absolutely essential to successful armored operations. Guderian had developed radio communication systems that enabled tank officers to effectively coordinate attacks. He understood that rapid armor advances required reliable communication. Yet, by 1943, German tank production simply couldn't provide the radios that Guderian's own doctrine demanded. German production statistics revealed the full extent of the crisis. In 1943, Germany manufactured approximately 5,700 medium tanks, but fewer than 2,000 FUG transceivers. Many of these radios went to command vehicles and assault guns, leaving regular tank units desperately short of communication equipment. Soviet tank forces suffered from even worse communication poverty. The T-34, despite being the most produced Allied tank, typically entered combat without any radio equipment whatsoever. Soviet doctrine relied heavily on flag signals and pre-battle planning, which often led to catastrophic results against German forces in 1941. By 1943, Lend-Lease provided some relief. American radios, including SCR-508 sets, equipped Soviet command tanks, but even by the war's end, only about 25% of Soviet tanks carried radios. The comparison highlighted American achievement. While the Soviet Union struggled to equip even 1/4 of their tanks with any radios, America achieved 100% deployment of sophisticated FM systems. Motorola's Chicago factory represented American industrial mobilization at its peak. Before the war, the company manufactured car radios. Converting to military production required complete retooling and solving unprecedented technical challenges. Each SCR-508 required 2,748 individual components manufactured to exacting standards. The BC-604 transmitter contained 474 capacitors and 385 resistors. Crystal oscillators had to maintain frequency stability despite temperature extremes and combat vibration. Production statistics told the story of American industrial might. 1942, 3,800 SCR-508 family radios. 1943, 11,400 units. 1944, 24,000 units. Total wartime production exceeded 50,000 tank radio sets. This production miracle ensured that all 49,324 Sherman tanks manufactured during the war received sophisticated radio equipment, an achievement no other nation even approached. The SCR-508's advantages went far beyond simple frequency modulation. Crystal-controlled frequency stability meant tanks could preset channels before battle and maintain alignment despite combat conditions. German FUG-5 radios, which used variable capacitor tuning, constantly drifted off frequency. The dual receiver configuration allowed commanders to monitor their platoon net and the company command net simultaneously. Orders flowed seamlessly down the chain of command while commanders maintained clear awareness of subordinate situations. The BC-606 intercom system integrated seamlessly with the radio, allowing all crew members to instantly alert the commander to potential threats. Throat microphones and noise-canceling headphones enabled clear communication, even during intense combat. Many German tanks lacked intercoms entirely, forcing crews to communicate by touch or by shouting above the din. Power management provided another significant American advantage. The SCR-508 operated on either 12 or 24 volts, automatically adjusting to the available power. The dynamo motor power supply provided stable, filtered power that effectively eliminated electrical interference. German radios, powered directly from the vehicle's electrical systems, picked up every spark as annoying static. The tactical advantages of universal radio deployment completely transformed American armored doctrine. The combat command structure, with its flexible task forces organized for specific missions, depended entirely on reliable communications. American commanders could create ad hoc battle groups from different units, confident they could coordinate effectively through compatible radios. This flexibility baffled German commanders who were accustomed to rigid organizational structures necessitated by their limited communications. During the Battle of Ericourt in September 1944, the 4th Armored Division faced multiple German Panzer brigades equipped with superior Panther tanks. The Germans had every advantage in armor and firepower, but American radio coordination proved decisive. Every Sherman could instantly report enemy positions. Tank destroyers received targeting information from tanks they couldn't even see. Artillery observers in Sherman command tanks called in devastating barrages within minutes. Over 3 weeks, the 4th Armored Division destroyed 281 German armored vehicles while losing only 41 Shermans, a 7-to-1 kill ratio that completely defied technical specifications. Throughout the war, German intelligence consistently failed to grasp the significance of American communication superiority. Combat reports mentioned American coordination, but they often attributed it to superior training rather than superior technology. A captured September 1944 intelligence assessment stated, "American tank units demonstrate good radio discipline and coordination. This appears to result from extensive training and rigid communication procedures." The report completely missed the underlying technological advantage. German tactics never adapted to American capabilities. They continued targeting supposed command tanks based on antenna configurations, not realizing that every Sherman could effectively coordinate battlefield responses. They planned ambushes, assuming American tanks would lose coordination when separated, not understanding that reliable radio contact maintained unit cohesion regardless of visual contact. March 1945. As American forces approached the Rhine, their communication superiority reached its zenith. The capture of the Remagen Bridge demonstrated the sheer speed of American command and control. When the 9th Armored Division discovered the Ludendorff Bridge intact, radio reports reached 1st Army headquarters within minutes. Within an hour, divisions across the entire front were shifting to exploit the opportunity. German forces, dependent on vulnerable telephone lines that American aircraft systematically destroyed, couldn't respond with comparable speed. American radio coordination created an impenetrable defense of the bridgehead. Tank platoons from different battalions integrated seamlessly, coordinating fires through reliable radio networks. German counterattacks, poorly coordinated due to communication failures, arrived piecemeal and were destroyed in detail. April 1945, the encirclement of the Ruhr Pocket demonstrated the culmination of American communication superiority. American armored columns from the 1st and 9th Armies coordinated a complex double envelopment entirely through radio communications. Inside the pocket, 325,000 German troops found themselves trapped, partly because their communications had completely collapsed. American fighter bombers, guided by radio-equipped forward air controllers, systematically destroyed German communication nodes. Wehrmacht units lost contact with both higher headquarters and each other. Field Marshal Walter Model's final messages before communication failure revealed the German plight. No contact with adjacent units. No communication with higher headquarters. Fighting continues, but coordination impossible. American radio superiority profoundly affected the psychological experience of tank warfare. American crews fought with the comforting knowledge that they were never truly alone. Even when physically isolated, they remained connected through the invisible power of radio waves. German tank crews, on the other hand, experienced the opposite, a profound sense of isolation. Unable to communicate effectively, they fought individual battles within larger engagements. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders, wrote in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud, about the frustrating challenges of limited communications, though he focused more on the tactical aspects than the broader communication gap itself. The strategic implications extended far beyond individual battles. American advances in 1944 and 1945 maintained their relentless tempo partly through radio coordination that German forces simply couldn't match. The Third Army's rapid race across France depended on robust radio networks that maintained effective control across hundreds of miles. German commanders consistently underestimated American capabilities because they couldn't even conceive of the level of communication superiority the Americans possessed. Heinz Guderian, in his role as Inspector General of Armored Troops, recognized the problem but couldn't effectively solve it. In a December 1944 memorandum, he acknowledged that American coordination negated German advantages in tank quality. After Germany's surrender, American technical intelligence teams meticulously evaluated German equipment. Their findings confirmed what combat experience had strongly suggested. German tanks often possessed superior